just bring you up to speed here about me, little backstory, is that about 7 years ago, I've been working in the UK. They asked if I could be the poster girl for mental illness. And I said, yeah, that's okay. Well, I didn't say yeah. I said, this is how it happened. There was a mental health charity, okay, and they said, could they take my photo for raising some money? So I said, okay. But I thought it was going to be like a little picture that you'd never see, tiny postage stamp size. But instead, about a month later, all over London, there were gigantic posters of me everywhere that said, get this one, 1 in 4 people have mental illness. It gets better. 1 in 5 people have dandruff. I have both. Couldn't believe it. I don't know who wrote that. So I was mortified. There are parts of my body I still can't unclench. So anyway, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a show, and I'm going to make that look like it's my publicity poster. Yeah, Jewish. Took it over there, and I used it. Thank you. So what I did was I did write a show. This is true, and I toured it in mental institutions for 2 years. Yes, I really did. Check Google. And I think they liked it. Couldn't really tell they weren't always facing the front. Could be anything. But the bipolars used to say, I laughed, I cried. Yeah. Anyway, psychotics still write to me, some of those. Big fan base there. I'm going to kill you. But, you know, it's a fan base. So I perform in their smoking rooms. This is really true. And, you know, these are my people. These people are my tribe because I have serious depression. So we recognized each other's eyes. You know, they were of my ilk. So I would do the show. Then we'd have like a little break. And we used to steal food from the anorexics. They didn't mind. And then they'd all come back in again, and we'd have a discussion. There'd be a huge discussion, and they asked unbelievable questions, unanswerable. One woman, she used to ask, well, she asked a few times, how do you get a poltergeist out of a vacuum cleaner? Can't answer. So what happened was the show took off. This is really true, and it went to real theaters. Big theaters around the world. It went to Australia, it went to New Zealand, it went to Cape Town, it went to all over Europe. And now I wasn't, you know, these are now real theaters, okay? And we do the same thing. We'd have a break, and then there'd be discussion. Well, okay, these are not the 1 in 4. This is 4 in 4. And this is true, like you. Now, like, you know, normal. It doesn't... I miss the people in the institutions, to be honest with you. But they did ask the same questions. Everywhere I went, they asked the same questions, whatever country. They said that people felt that they were driven by this frenzy of busyness, you know, that they were living at top speeds, and they just felt everything was out of control. And they all mentioned they had these critical thoughts in their head that were just pushing them on. I can't, I should have, I didn't, I screwed it, which is such a relief to me, because I thought I was the only one that had them. Really, I've never had a thought in my head that said, what a wonderful thing I'm doing, and may I say how attractive I am today. Never happened. Never happened. But, you know, these are questions I wanted answered. So, you know, with the busy thing, when would the busy thing have started? Do you know? Suddenly one guy one day went, you busy? The other one went, I'm busy. Are you busy? I'm busier than you are. Get out of here. I'm run off my feet. What are you doing after you're busy? It like spread like a virus, like a plague. Isn't it weird to you that the very thing that's making us crazy is how we check each other out how well we're doing? And the more busy you are, the more status. Yeah, people come up to me, they say, are you busy? I go, am I busy? I've had a quadruple bypass. I'm on life support. They go, that's sensational. Fantastic. Anyway, then with the busy doing, now you got to know everything. Suddenly, you've got to know everything going on in the world. You know those people, they know everything. You see them at dinner parties, they're yakking away, saying things like, you know what I would do if I was Putin? No, what would you do if you were Putin? Because really, he wants to know. He's on the other end of the telephone. He wants to know what you would do. You know what I would tell the Taliban? No. What would you tell the Taliban? What would you tell them? I would tell them to go back where they came from. Go back to Israel. Experts. There must be 64 billion experts sitting right now in coffee shops around the world giving their expert opinion. Oh, and then there's people who have one piece of information. very important, but they have one piece of information. They spend their lives shoveling together their little mound of research just so they can spew it at you at dinner parties and bore you senseless. I'm always sitting next to the guy. Always. You know, one who's telling you what the Flemish were doing at 2:45 on Tuesday during World War II. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, should I know this information? Is there going to be a test? Does the man think I'm an idiot? And just as my self-esteem is about to hit the floorboards, the phlegm expert whips out another piece of information like a big swinging dick. Can I be honest? Can I be honest? I don't even know where phlegm mark is. You know, listen. All this technology, there's no question, we're at the top of our game. No question, we can make computers busier than we'll ever be. Technology's really, it's doing so well, we're actually going to be evolving into that. Someday we're going to have, instead of skin cells, we'll have silicone chips. We'll have pincers on our fingers, but millions of them, so we can multitask really quickly. And then we'll be perfect, we'll be flawless. We'll have silvery, silvery metal skin and an imprint of an apple where our heart used to be. But right now, we know nothing. We know nothing about how our brains work. No idea. This little baby is running us. We're not running it. Our thoughts are jumping, jumping, jumping like moths on cocaine. This brain that knows so much about the world knows so little about itself. It's like we have a Ferrari on top of our heads, but nobody gave us the keys. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to study the mothership. I'm going to find out why, if we are the top of the food chain, are we driving ourselves to extinction? So I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crash a course in neuroscience. Yes, and so I did that, and it was filled with 21-year-olds. And so I told him I had that disease where you age really fast. And we partied. I even dated a couple guys. Then they found out I really was old. Didn't matter. In the end, they liked me because I was the one with the car. So what happened then was, I decided I would study neuroscience, and I would find out why the human race is in such a pickle. And I did. Why are we so screwed now? I mean, it's not just the 1 in 4 with the mental thing or the 1 in 5 with the dandruff. This is for everybody. Nobody can cope with the 21st century. Okay. So I'd like to give you some of my conclusions. Okay, some of this is fact, some of this I'm making up. What's the difference? Okay, here's a little bit. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of years ago, when we were roaming on the ancient savannah, we were perfectly fine. We were at one with nature. Everything was fine. Then when we'd feel threat or we'd feel fear, this part deep in our brain called the amygdala would send out an alarm, and our body would be fueled with this cortisol and adrenaline, which would turn us from nice guy to killer maniac. Then when the predator came along, we would take him on, and we'd bash him, and when the incident was over and we were still left standing, we'd go back to being calm and serene again. Now here's the problem. These days we can't get calm. We always feel under threat. So our bodies are fueled with this cortisol and adrenaline all the time because we're being bombarded by bad news day and night, and we got no way of draining this thing. I mean, this amygdala is switched on whether there's danger right behind you or something is happening 20,000 miles away. It can't tell the difference. So now suddenly I need to know there's an earthquake in Dong Fong Dong. I'm hysterical. What can I do? There's a flood in Dead Brain, Ohio. What am I supposed to do? Get a bucket and a hand pump? I cannot do anything. We're only supposed to know what our neighbors are up to. That's what we have the bandwidth for. Like, if the woman next door to me is having sex with the man next door to her, I have to know that. But 4 doors down, none of my business. And as far as those critical inner thoughts, well, here's my theory. Okay, I know I'm right. Okay, back in the bush, back on the savannah when we were all animals, we all, as animals are, we were vigilant. We had to look around, see where danger was coming from. We had to look over the hill. Then when language came online, only about 50,000 years ago, we started to translate those feelings of vigilance and of danger. And so it came into our heads, these really bad translations of, I can't, I shouldn't, I didn't, I screwed up, my mother thought I was an idiot, she was right. You see, and because we live in this culture of a drip feed of terror, with this surround sound fear going on, these voices just keep coming. This is what's making us crazy. This is what's keeping you up all night, the danger we can deal with. And those thoughts are even more negative, depending on mommy and daddy's early input. Like my mother always used to say to me, I only tell you you're a moron because I'm your mother and I love you. You know her. Anyway, I've told you why the voices. Now I'm going to tell you where are the voices in your head. Do you want to hear that? Okay. So, where are the voices? Let me just clear it up really quickly. Shit, I think I've run out of time. Should I go on a little bit more? Okay. I'll talk really fast because I'm from England. We have different times. Okay. A lot of people think when you crack your skull open, there's a kind of mini me up there, shouting abuse through a bullhorn, cracking a whip. Nobody's up there. Put it out of your head. Nobody. What we have up here is the brain. This little magnificent orb is what creates the illusion of thoughts, the illusion of words. Everything goes on up here. You got this 100 billion neurons zapping information from one to the next. And between each neuron is a little gap called a synapse. And chemicals are squirted across that gap that activate the next neuron to fire. This is how neurons communicate, through electrical and chemical impulses. So everything that defines who you are and everything that defines who I am is a result of those neural connections and those squirts of chemicals. So I'm thinking, oh my God. So everything you do, everything that makes you do what you do is because of these chemicals. And when chemicals feed information into your body, they're called hormones. So chemical hormones, same thing. Do you not believe me? Okay, well, if you don't, think about sex. It's okay, I'll give you a few minutes. You see, when you think about it, the hormones, they're the ones that switch on, and that's what makes the action happen. If you don't have any hormones, you can think all you want. Ain't nothing going to happen. And sometimes the hormones switch on, and you weren't even thinking about anything. That's when you get a hard-on, an erection in an elevator. He doesn't care anymore. Doesn't care, he's eating. But so my point is, we have about 100 different chemicals that are running us, 100 different hormones. Should I just name you a few of my favorite? Okay, first, these are my big faves. Serotonin, this is the feel-good chemical. This is these people aren't people pleasers. They don't have to set their hair on fire to get attention. They're just happy being themselves. I have none of that drug, none of that. I have to buy it over a counter. Then we have oxytocin. This is people who are all runny and lovely and mumsy and lovely. And they always put other people in front of them. And they're always in the back of the line going, no, it's all right. I'm not in a hurry. Please, they're usually English. Please, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, my own teeth have fallen out. I'm so sorry. Please, hit me over the head. I don't deserve to live. Please, I'm so sorry. I have none of that drug. But my drug of choice is adrenaline. Sometimes I call a taxi to get me to the airport, and when it gets to my house, then I start packing. I love that one. Anyway, my point is, it suddenly occurred to me that if this brain is so magnificent, maybe we can control those impulses. Maybe, at this point, we can regulate those chemicals and cool our engines when we want to. And I really needed to at this point in my life. This is about 7 years ago. I mean, my life was going off the rails. I'd wake up in the morning with a to-do list that never ended. Buy dog food, collect turtle, worry about Ebola, cook a chicken, call Suzanne, return the duvet, cook. It never ended. Then the depressions I had, they were getting more and more severe and more often. The last one I had was 7 years ago. I couldn't get out of a chair for 3 months with lead going through my veins and those really abusive voices, but not one abusive voice, about 100,000 abusive voices, like if the devil had Tourette's. That's what it would sound like. So I thought, I'm not going to have this anymore. So I researched, was there any way that we could bring down those chemicals, that we could be the driver rather than the driven? And I researched it, and I found out that mindfulness and cognitive-based therapy, I never heard of these things, had the best results. So I thought, let's not take any chances, let's do both. So I hunted down the founder of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and he was a professor at Oxford, and I was ill at that time. I drove to Oxford, I think I drove into many trees. And then I got to him. There must have been a couple pine cones hanging from my head. I said, just tell me, what happened? Don't give me the fluffy stuff. What happens in the brain? What goes on in there when you can inhibit those impulses? What does it look like? And he said, well, unfortunately, if you want to find out about that, you'd have to get into Oxford and get your master's. And because I have the drive of a Rottweiler, I did, and I graduated in September. So thank you. So, thank you. So here's what made the whole thing worth it. I don't know why this isn't shouted from rooftops. I do not know why this isn't on every headline of every newspaper every day. That you can change the wiring in your brain. You can change it, and therefore you can regulate the chemicals by changing how you think. People used to think when we came into the world we were at the mercy of our genes, that how you came into the world is how you'd go out. But it's not true. Look, the length of my legs and the color of my eyes, those you inherit, there's very little you can do. I will never forgive my parents for giving me the legs of a dachshund. Never. And I'm just about coming to terms that I will never go down that catwalk. Just. Because I would have been sensational. Pout, 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 anger, and pivot. Did you see that? It feels so right. Pout, 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 anger. Then I see myself in a mirror. I could open a vein. But the genes that create your brain, they keep changing because they're dependent on experience. It's like they hand you a blueprint, like they hand you a deck of cards, but how you play them is up to you. It's 2014. They know this stuff. They know this. For God's sake, it's 2014, and I have a girlfriend. She's well-educated. I'm not making this up. 6 months ago, she went on a weekend workshop for how to heal your inner elf. Imagine what went on there. A lot of crying and hiding under mushrooms. 2014. Another one of my friends, he went to university, sent me for my birthday to somebody who told me about my past life. I don't know if you know this, but in 1472, I was a window cleaner. Everybody else gets to be Nefertiti. I'm a window cleaner. It's 2014. They can look inside brain scanners now, and they can watch those neurons wire and unwire. And every time they do it, it corresponds to how you think and how you feel. And the good news is you can break your habits. You can unwire the unuseful habits, and then you can reconnect and give yourself a more flexible, or dare I say, happier life. And this is called neuroplasticity. So you're the architect of your own brain. Thank you, which means Gloria Gaynor was wrong when she sang that song, I Am What I Am. You aren't what you are. You have infinite possibilities, so she's going to have to change those lyrics. But it's not going to be easy, because what rhymes with neuroplasticity? So anyway, just to cut to the chase, I did that course. I also had to do mindfulness. It doesn't work for everybody. Every day I have to sit there. I mean, you're not going to get a six-pack with one sit-up. When I got to England, people weren't even brushing their teeth. Now the whole country's doing sit-ups, because it's the same thing. You have to do the discipline every day. I sit and you look in what's going on in your mind, and only when you look in. You don't become the slave by obeying every single order, but you just sit like you would with it and give a lot of sympathy and empathy, and you watch your thoughts, and gradually you realize thoughts are not facts. So it may be a coincidence. I haven't had depression for 7 years. There's no cure, but at least I can hear early warnings before it hits me. You know, like an animal will hear an earthquake, it can hear the early beating. So basically, I'd like to thank that mental health charity, for giving me the poster, because it outed me, it got me into Oxford, and it probably saved my life. So if you want satisfaction, do it yourself.